for the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Trevor, good afternoon to you. I've always trusted Govern's judgment. Are you making empty threats, or are you really able to back up what you say?
Good afternoon, Steve. They're not really empty threats. What we have, of course, is a plan of action which would unfold in different phases. At the current moment, we're going for the National Day of Action, which is set for the 22nd, as Govern just explained. But we are also looking, because we just struck this unity not long ago, we are hoping that we will build on this particular unity to be able to, after the National Day of Action, to continue working together to come up with plans through which we can carry out the indefinite strike which we have in mind. The impediment at the current moment would be the festive season, which is just upon us. And as a result, it might not be feasible for us to be able to have such a particular protracted strike which would bear concrete gains immediately. So we might consider, and these are going to be talks after the National Day of Action, about January, February, and what we might have to do in the reopening of the new year.
I mean, you're going to take this out, stretch this out for another 6 weeks, really, before anything happens. I mean, it would probably have to be after schools come back. So we're looking at 2 months from now before you're actually able to get a strike together. Can you really do that?
Yes, we can do that. Remember, this is, for us, a question of a death and life, especially in as far as the collective bargaining is concerned. If government would unilaterally implement 3% without an agreement by majority parties in the chamber, what does it mean? It means that we are going to be forced into another set of negotiations for the financial year 2023-2024. And should we be able to allow government to drag us into such negotiations without us having settled the impasse of 2022-2023? I do not think that would work for us. And if we let government to go ahead, implement and get away with it without any fight back, we would actually be setting a wrong precedence as Labour.
In the end, what you'd be doing, Trevor, and I accept your point. I mean, I feel your point. And I do feel your point. But I think it's also important, and Govan touched on this, and I think he's correct too. So you've got a 3% increase. You, in 2 months' time, would be asking workers to go on an indefinite strike for the difference. So you want 6.5%. You'd be asking them to go on strike for 3.5 percentage points. Do you think people would be willing to risk income for that?
No, remember, our demand is 10%.
Okay.
It's not 6%.
All right, so you go, okay, yeah, that does make sense. So you'd be going for quite a bit more than that. Why do you think government isn't listening to you? I mean, again, Tula Simnesi comes from the union movement. If you've lost his phone number, I'm happy to share it with you. Don't tell him. But, I mean, why do you think he's not listening?
I think those people have lost themselves in the systems and the aspirations of the government. Our government is actually committed to neoliberal capitalism, and as a result, the policies which are dictated by that particular government and the party ANC itself are the ones which are carried through. And if you look at the neoliberal prescripts of how this monetary and fiscal policy should be run, in particular on the fiscal side, you will realize that they are pushing for austerity measures which should be implemented by government in order to follow what they call fiscal consolidation. And in this, we are experiencing a problem because not only are they committed to neoliberal capitalism, but also they are fulfilling what the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank are dictating to them. And you have that problem in which, because South Africa, being part of the global capitalist system, but also belonging to the institutions of capitalism globally, it tries by all means to abide by that. And this is one of those issues in which government is tried by all means to abide. And unfortunately, this fiscal consolidation forced down our throat is leading to these austerities which have led to the reduction in the public sector wage bill, but also the CPI minus wage increases which workers have been getting since 2020.
So, I mean, Trevor, another way of putting all of that is that government believes it must pay its debts, that it doesn't have enough money, and that the money that it does have, this would be the argument from government now, the money that it does have must actually go to the huge number of people who are unemployed, whereas before 2020, and I accept that you've had below inflation increases since then, and that you probably have to feed more people because of what happened during COVID, but there are so many other demands on government money that you shouldn't get increases when you got above inflation increases before 2020.
Remember, those were offsetting, of course, costs of that particular period, and we cannot really use them for this particular period. We have entered a period of high inflation, and as a result, we are going to have to raise the wages and salaries of workers to cushion against the general rise in the prices of goods and services. That's the first point. The second point is that you have to understand that from our premise, government really does not and cannot be able to say to us that it cannot spend on either the social wage or the public sector wage bill and all that. These are commitments in which we think that government's monetary system is able to put money into the system fiscally to ensure that certain goods and services are paid for, but also we're able to hire more workers. So for us, it's not merely a question of wage increases, but it's also a bigger picture looking at the delivery of services for our people.
Okay,
we do not think government...
I'm sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, and I know it's rude, but there was a time when the position of government workers was here, and the position of people in the private sector was here, okay? You can't see me, but what I'm saying is that the position of people in government workers relative to other people improved over 10 years. It really did. After COVID, that continued, and the position of government workers improved because they got above inflation increases, and during COVID, they kept their jobs, and many people in the private sector did not. I have sympathy for your position, don't get me wrong. My point is, and I think it's important that I don't think that your unions and your members have the support of society in the way that you did 10 years ago. But if your position in society has improved relative to the position of everyone else, isn't this the moment when maybe things should be equalized a little?
Equalized in what sense? Are you saying that the public service workers' wages must be stagnant in order to wait for the private?
I'm saying that you had 10 good years, and everyone else is really... Well, you got above inflation increases, and everyone else is really suffering. Maybe this is the moment to cut back a little. That would go the argument.
Cut a little and take it where?
Well, help people who don't have jobs at all, or lost jobs. Put it to infrastructure so that we can employ people to build the infrastructure.
But government can still pursue a job-creating economy without having to cut the wages of the public servants. And it still can pursue an infrastructure-led development without having to cut the wages of the public servants. We do not think that government has a debt problem. And that's where I think the crux of the matter lies, because they are moving from a neoliberal monetarist point of view, which says that the government debt is unsustainable, and therefore they are going to have to cut expenditure on social goods and services. And we are saying they are not having any debt crisis because a monetary sovereign system cannot fail to meet its spending obligations, which are denominated in its own currency. And in this instance, this would be domestic expenditure, and we are not going to experience any problems. What debt crisis lies there, which they are pointing to as a way to justify their austerity.
Trevor Shaku, I appreciate the view. Thank you very much indeed. Spokesperson for the South African Federation of Trade Unions.